So let's get started with today's session. I'm KZ, and I'm a program manager on the Windows team that designs user experiences for cameras. Before joining Microsoft, I was a graduate student at Stanford University, and then somewhere along the way, the allure of designing software for hundreds and millions of users brought me to Microsoft, and here I am 4 years down the road. Before going into the session, let me also introduce my co-presenter for the session today, Mehmet.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mehmet Küçükgöz, program manager in media platform team in Windows. This is the team that has been designing the media APIs for you. I worked specifically on the capture APIs that allow your apps access the camera and the mic in the system.
So we welcome you all to 715, Building a Great Metro-Style Device App for Your Camera. We have a great session lined up for you today. This is a session where you're going to learn how your cameras, whether they are integrated into the system or whether they are externally plugged in, can deliver a great differentiated experience of the sort that was shown in one of the keynote demos. So in case you missed the keynote demo for the keynote session, Mike Angelo was setting up his user tile or his account picture, and he jazzed it up before setting it with some cool effects that were only available for that particular camera. So if he had switched to a different camera and pressed the same button, those effects would not have been there. And that is the differentiation opportunity that we are going to discuss in today's session. So as you can imagine from the title of the session, the way to achieve that differentiation is going to be Metro-style device apps for your cameras. So we're going to discuss what these apps are and how you can create one of these apps for your device so that your users can get the same kicks out of your devices. To provide you some context into our thinking, when we started designing Windows 8 and the camera experiences in Windows 8, we wanted to provide a great experience for users to take photos and record videos. And we also wanted to provide developers a way to access these devices, which are now essentially ubiquitous in all form factors and all devices. And the built-in Windows 8 experiences that we have built and the associated APIs, they are going to make sure that your devices are readily used by and are readily available to all developers and users for some great capture experiences. But we also understand that all cameras are not created equal, and there's a great variance in camera specifications and the unique values and capabilities that these cameras offer. And so we also wanted to make sure that we provide a way to all of you to surface the device innovation that all of you do and to bring the best of your product forward to all of our users. So if there is one thing that I would like you to take away from today's session, it would be to take stock of the opportunities, the camera differentiation opportunities that exist in Windows 8, and that exist in Windows 8 in context of the built-in Windows 8 experiences, as well as in context of third-party Metro-style apps. And this in-context piece is what I would like you to focus on for the rest of this session, because this in-context piece is the force multiplier, where you author a single experience, and then Windows makes that experience available to all Metro-style apps. So before we dive into the whole session and start looking at it, let's look at a demo of what we mean by this in-context experience. And this is the same demo that was shown in the keynote session, but this time around we are going to look at it in a little more detail and try and dissect each of the pieces of this demo.
So here I am on the start page, navigating to the control panel, and I want to update my account picture. Here, I already have an account picture. I can choose to pick a file from the file system, but even better, I can take a live picture using the camera on the system. Now, if I click here, what's happening is that account picture page is calling this brand new API that we have in Windows 8 that are available to all developers to call. This is a built-in UX and predefined workflow. So let's see this experience a little bit. Here, I'm in the picture mode. I can switch to video mode. Going back to the picture mode, I can specify a timer so I can position myself well before taking a picture. I can also play around with some settings, clicking on the settings and more options. You will see that we are able to change the brightness and contrast, some standard settings that are available for all cameras today. So any camera will get this default experience always. So let's see another camera now. I have this live cam. I'm going to switch to that camera. And then look at those settings as before. Wow, so I have some customized settings for this camera that is associated with this camera. I have some settings, some effects at the top of the list, some controls that are unique to this device and delivered through this customized experience. And so I think what I'll do is I'll apply one of these effects. I don't know which one to go with. Let's say this is a good one, but I'm not really feeling that funky. So I always wanted a cowboy hat for my account picture. I'll try this one. Let's position ourselves, smile. Perfect. Let's make this a little bit better. Accept the picture. And there you go. The account picture is updated with the customized effects and the settings that are provided through the device, MetroStyle device app that is associated with this camera.
So for the rest of this session, we are going to dissect this demo with Mehmet's fake smile. And we're going to look at what actually constitutes this experience that was just shown. So a MetroStyle camera experience actually consists of 4 distinct pieces. First, there's your MetroStyle app, which provides the user experience side of your experience. And then this talks to a user mode plugin that we are calling a driver MFT, or a driver media foundation transform, which in turn interacts with your device to implement all of the functionality and all of the unique capabilities that we have been talking about. And then all of these things are linked together through device metadata, which essentially tells Windows that which app goes with which device and sort of does that pairing. If we look a little deeper, the MetroStyle device app itself has 2 distinct components. So first of all, it's an app. It's a standard app like any other MetroStyle app, which means that it has a presence on the prime real estate, which is the Windows Start screen, and it can be launched for a standalone experience just like any other app. And we are calling that part of the experience the Start experience. Then there's the second component, which is this in-context piece that we just saw in the demo. So Mehmet was using the camera in context of another app, the control panel app. And this experience came up in this flyout. And that we are calling the camera options experience. And so together, the Start experience, the camera options experience, together with the driver MFT and the device metadata, they deliver the MetroStyle camera experience and offer a unique and differentiated experience for your device. So we're going to talk about each of these components sequentially, starting with the Start experience, since it's only fitting that we start with the experience that's named Start. So what is the Start experience? The Start experience is the part of your app that is launched when a user clicks on the tile in the Start menu. So this is a great opportunity for differentiation because it provides your device a presence on the Windows Start screen. And you can build a whole app and a whole experience in the space. There are a whole bunch of things that you can do around in this experience. We have listed some here for reference. You can do things like showing up related merchandise. So in case of cameras, these could be headsets or mics or things of that order. You can also do things like user guides or tutorials or videos associated with your device. Or you can use these to surface up extra services, specialized services such as postcards or photo strips, things like that. And there can also be affordances to download additional software or additional effects and things of that order. But in the end, these are just some suggestions from our end. This is your experience, your canvas to paint on. You control every pixel on the screen. So this is your experience to build how you ever so want it. But we do have a recommendation that you do not use this experience as a launcher into your website or one of your partners' website, because this is not designed to be a launcher. This is designed to be this immersive, engaging experience which really resonates with the user. So to show you a sample of what this experience could look like, for the LiveCam Studio, for which you just saw the demo, this is the start experience for their app. And so it has some of the same things that we were talking about. The first tile shows up, talks about the series of cameras that the user just bought. The second one is around downloading additional effects, additional software. The third one is around related products, and then the fourth one is around providing some support to the user. So this is their take on what it could be, and you can choose what you want it to be. So howsoever great this start experience is, you probably want something more. You want your differentiation to show up not just in a singular app on the Windows Start screen, but you want it to show up anytime and every time in context to wherever your camera is being used. And that makes a lot of sense, because you can imagine how many cool apps are going to get built around these devices, which are now essentially present in all systems now. And you would want your experience to light up in the context of all those metro-style apps. So you author one experience, and then it shows up everywhere. And the camera options experience delivers just exactly that. So before we dive into the guts of talking about this experience, let's see a couple of more demos.
So here, what I have is another sample app written by my team. This is an interesting app that is simulating the experience of using a digital camera. As you can see, I'm using the viewfinder area of the app to display a live stream from my camera. I'm in the picture mode now, so I can take a picture. I can change modes, switch to a video mode, record a video, go back to the picture mode, take a couple of others. And then I can go back and view these pictures that I've taken. And the implementer of this app had chosen also to provide this other button. When I click there, what's happening? Seems like we're having a problem. Just give me a second. Launch that app again. So what was going to happen once I click at that menu was that customized experience that you've seen earlier through the personalization page would show up again here. So in a way, you write this experience once, and any app that is calling one simple API, Camera Options UI, will be able to launch that customized experience through their app. So let's see another app that is doing using the camera. So this is Tile Puzzle. It's one of my favorite apps. In a way, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get back to the original image, right? The implementer of this app provided you to create a new puzzle, and the options you have, you can pick an image and create a puzzle that way. But also, the app has this option to pick a webcam image, and we go back to that customized, the Windows provided built-in experience, and I click on the more options, and the same settings that we've seen before that are provided and associated with this LifeCam are also available for me so that I can take a picture with some effects applied. And then use that in my game. And what's happening here is that under the covers, when the camera options UI is called by the app, our infrastructure is looking to see whether there is a Metro-style device app associated with that camera. If there is a Metro-style device app associated that is provided by the IHV, we launch that experience. If not, we launch the default experience that you've seen at the very beginning of the demos at the personalization page.
And let's start looking at what constitutes this experience. So the camera options experience, as we have now discussed and shown in this multitude of demos, is that it's an experience that shows up in context to wherever the camera is being used. In an app, whether the app is a chat application, or whether it's a capture application, or whether it's just some other application that is using a camera to just get an image into it, this is the experience that shows up in all those contexts. And it shows up against this API call that we are calling the Camera Options UI API. This experience is different from the start experience in the sense that it's restricted to this flyout size. But within that flyout, you control every pixel. And this camera options experience is the place where you're going to implement all the advanced functionality and all the unique functionality for your camera. So this is a great place to do the sort of effects that we have seen in the demo. So whether they are color effects like saturation, sepia, one of those things, or they are face tracking effects of the form that we saw, stars on your head, hat on your head, or special event effects like a birthday cake or something of that order. This is also a great place to do advanced functionality for your camera if you have, for example, scene modes, like a snow mode or a daylight mode or a sports mode for your camera. This is the experience that you can use to kick that off. And the camera options experience also works great if you have some advanced functionality around capture. So image stabilization, video stabilization, all of those things can be implemented through this experience as well. And the way apps end up using it is that from any Metro-style app, they're going to call the Camera Capture UI API. This is the API that was providing the capture experience that Mehmet was showing you. And there's a button in that API called More Options. So when a user clicks on that button, this API is called, which launches your Metro-style device app, the camera options experience portion of it. Or alternatively, an app can directly call into the Camera Options UI API and get the same experience. So this was the second demo with that sample app with the digital camera that unfortunately didn't work. But that app was going to call directly into the Camera Options UI and get this Metro-style device app of yours. Now, in order to provide ISVs this assurance that some experience is always going to be there, we have a default camera options experience. But this is just a default experience, and your preferences, the customized preferences, always takes precedence over the built-in Windows options. The built-in Windows options are there to make sure that ISVs can just call into this API and don't worry about the fact that whether you have implemented this experience or not. So what would you need to do to implement this sort of experience for your app? Well, you would need to implement this user experience. So you would have to have the camera options experience for your app. And as I just mentioned, it's going to be a different experience from your start because it's going to be restricted to this flyout. It has some other additional design constraints around it. It needs to be vertically panable, et cetera. And we have a white paper that I've linked towards the end of the session that's just going to talk about talk in detail about all the design considerations that we have around this experience. And then the second piece is for you to subscribe to the camera options contract. And this is because this would let Windows know that your app is implementing this experience, and then whenever your camera is being used, Windows can go find that experience and launch it. And it's going to be as easy as this to just subscribe to this contract. So in your apps manifest, there's this extensions piece, And in that extensions, you just call out that you're going to subscribe to the Windows camera settings contract, and you specify an entry point, the entry point of your app that corresponds to this experience, and that's about it. So to do a recap of where we started off with, we said these 4 things constitute your overall Metro-style camera experience. And we have talked about the first 2, which is the start experience and the camera options experience. And this is the presentation layer, the user experience portion of your differentiation. But where the code actually gets written and where you implement all the advanced functionality, that is the camera driver MFT. So now let's talk about that piece of it. So the camera driver MFT is essentially an extension of your camera driver. And it enables communication between your camera options on experience on one end and your device on the other end. And the genesis of this component is that we have been hearing consistent feedback in the past that implementing advanced functionality in drivers has potentially been complicated, and writing it in kernel mode is error-prone and causes problems of all sorts. And so this is a response, and this is a result of that feedback that we have gotten in the past. That now you have a user mode component that you can use to implement your advanced functionality. And all of the functionality that you expose in the camera options experience to the user, it's implemented here, and this is the place which alters the camera bit stream. And we're going to talk about it in more detail as well. Since this alters since this is an extension of your driver, this is installed as part of your driver, downloaded as part of your driver, and comes essentially as part of your driver. And the way this driver extension is implemented, it's implemented as a media foundation transform. For those of you unfamiliar with the concept of media foundation transforms, media foundation is essentially the infrastructure, the backbone of the media experiences in Windows 8. So media foundation is the piece in Windows that provides functionalities around capture, streaming, transcoding, playback, all those sort of media functionalities that we talk about. Media foundation is where that gets implemented. And MFTs, or media foundation transforms, are building blocks of that infrastructure. So essentially what a transform is, or a media foundation transform is that it takes bit streams from a source, in this case a camera, and then transforms them into something else before passing them on to a sink. Sink in this case could be either a file or the screen for the user. So where does driver MFT fit into this? So the driver MFT ends up being the first MFT that applies after the camera source. So you get the first dibs on the bits that come out of the camera, and so you're able to impact the camera stream before anybody else sees the camera stream. So the app is going to see it much later, but you are able to manipulate the camera stream right as it comes out of the camera. And that is actually how all the functionality gets implemented. So looking at another way to provide you context in terms of where does the third-party app sit, where does your Metro-style device app sits, let's look at it this way. There's the Metro-style app, which is using the camera. So this is one of the apps that we showed in our demo. And they are streaming from the camera using either a class driver for the class driver for the camera or an IHV customized driver. And so whatever the scenario is, that scenario is running using the camera. And then somewhere along the way, the camera options UI API is called. And that launches the LiveCam camera options experience. And that experience then starts interacting with this driver MFT, which sits in the pipeline for the main app. And then the camera options experience acts as the controlling entity, while the IHV driver MFT acts as the implementing entity. And so let's say if you're implementing an effect that turns everything green, a user is going to launch this flyout. They're going to press that button that turns that green thing on. That command is going to get passed to the driver MFT. The driver MFT is going to receive the bit stream, turn it green, and then pass it along. And so the app and the user eventually sees the stream as green. And that's how this functionality gets implemented. Now, my developers wanted to make sure that I mentioned this thing to you, that this driver MFT is loaded into the pipeline even before the camera options experience comes up. So in that state, it's essentially acting as a pass-through in most cases. But in some cases, it might act as something that provides things like additional formats that you might want to support that the camera doesn't support directly, but you're supporting them in software, and things of that order. But in the context of the talk here, this is essentially a pass-through filter as long as this camera experience options doesn't come up. And once it comes up and user presses a button or something like that, that's where it kicks in and starts affecting the bit stream. So what would you need to do to implement this camera driver MFT? Well, as we have talked about, you would write your code as a user mode extension to the driver, and then package it as an MFT so that the rest of the system, the rest of the Windows pipeline can understand it. You would implement a COM class for it, and then expose it to the Windows runtime. On the other side of it, through your camera installer, you're going to register this driver MFT so that Windows is aware of it. In case you're using the class driver, your camera inf is going to do the job of registering the driver MFT. And once you have done that, then Windows takes care of finding your app when a user presses this button, and then launching the right app for the camera in use. So back to where we started, we've talked about the start experience, the camera options experience, and then the driver MFT, which couples with the camera options experience to actually deliver this in-context piece that we have been talking about since the start. And what binds them all together is the device metadata. And this is similar to what you have been doing in the past if you have been working with device metadata in the past, is that you create a device metadata package. And the new thing is that you make this association in your metadata package saying that this device that this metadata package is for goes with this particular app. And then you submit your app to the App Store, and then Windows takes care of downloading it and finding it and all of those things. So I have some screenshots here for the metadata authoring wizard, but there's a different talk which covers this in a lot of more detail, and I've linked it towards the end, and we're going to just refer to it in a little bit. So if you can see, there's a tab on this authoring wizard that says Applications, and that's where you're going to implement, you're going to specify that what app goes with your device. So for those of you who manufacture internal cameras, there are some additional things that need to be done. And that is because internal cameras do not benefit from this plug-in event that happens when external cameras are plugged into the system. So let's talk about these things step by step. So the first thing that you would need to do is to set up location information in ACPI. If you're familiar with ACPI, the PLD section, the location descriptor section is where you are going to specify the camera location. And when we're talking about camera location, we are referring to front, back, bottom, top, all those kind of things, like where in the body of the device the camera is located. And as an aside, this is actually great not just for this feature, but for everything else in Windows. So for example, if somebody's writing a barcode app and they want to programmatically pick out the back camera, if you specify this information, then Windows is going to be able to let them know what the back camera is, and then they can pick out the back camera for that app. So you set the location information in ACPI, and then you set model ID for your internal cameras as registry keys in the system. And these model IDs are going to get based on the hardware ID of the device and based on the location information in the first step. And why do we have this location information thing here? The primary reason is that you might want to have different apps for your front camera and for your back camera. That's your prerogative if you want to do it that way. And if you would have bound it directly to hardware IDs, and in case your cameras, the way they usually end up being is that they have the same hardware IDs, so then they would not have been able to have different apps. So what this lets you do is that you can have different apps for the front and back camera if you have different experiences associated with them. Once you have done those two steps, then you do the same thing as before, which is create a device metadata package referring to that model ID that you set as a registry key, and referring to your app. And then for case of internal cameras, you're going to stage your app as well as your metadata package onto the system using OPK or any of the other mechanisms that are already used to do pre-staging on Windows. So once all of this is done, you're going to be able to deliver the great camera options experience that we saw and all the cool effects, and your users are going to see your differentiated experience in context to all those multitude of apps that we have been talking about. Quick recap, these were the 4 components that form this experience. And the opportunities that we discussed today is essentially that you author one experience, and then Windows makes that experience available to all apps via a simple API call. And we feel that this is a great model because it makes it ridiculously easy for app developers to take advantage of your secret sauce and your distinguished and different experience. And you just author it once, and then Windows makes it available to everybody. We have some related sessions that you might want to check out. Since this is the last day of the conference, most of these sessions have already happened. Actually, probably all of them have already happened. And so you can check out them online. But the first 3 sessions provide an overview of what Metro-style device apps are in general, and what's their sort of background, how do they work, how do they operate, how do they get downloaded, all of those things. The 4th session, the capturing personal photos and videos, is the other side of the picture. So that is how ISVs are going to use your camera. So this might be something interesting to you, and you might want to check it out. And then the last session goes a little deeper into the concept of Metro-style device apps and talks about how you can update your Metro-style device app and any other issues around those kind of things. We also have some documentation for you. The first, Developing Metro-style device apps for cameras, is a white paper, which essentially mirrors the talk that we just had, but goes into a lot of more detail around each of these topics. And so, for example, it provides the dimensions of the flyout that we saw, so what experience that you have to design. It specifies the exact registry keys that you need to set for your model ID and all those things like that. And it also links into some samples that we have so that you can actually look at those samples and see how you can construct this Metro-style device app for your camera. The second white paper is something that mirrors the first 3 talks that we just mentioned. So it provides an overall look at Metro-style device apps for various devices, and then how they install, downloaded, updated, all of those things. And then, of course, the Windows Dev Center home. It's a great place to check out, and you can find all sorts of resources there. And with that, thank you. I encourage you to send session feedback, and if you have any other feedback and questions for us, we're going to be right around here, and you can ask us questions. Thank you.